Okay, here's our notes for today. Let me get a better pen too. And we're doing lesson 5.1 and 5.2. This was a little figure that some of you might have seen from 6th grade. You cover the signs given. So if that would be a positive and a negative equals a negative, or two negatives equal a positive, it only works with multiplication and division. Memorizing the rules that we went over on our key concept notes is just as easy, but sometimes kids like the visual, realize it only works with multiplying and dividing. We're going to start with some rational numbers, and so if we have two negatives, our answer is a positive. And if we have mixed signs, our answer is a negative. We don't need to worry about which we have more of, whose absolute value is larger. It's just straight memorization of a rule. Doesn't matter the order that the numbers are in. Mixed signs, negative. Two of the like signs, a positive. Looking down here at some longer problems, we need to figure out whether our answer would be a positive or a negative. Pause the video for a second and take a guess on whether you think this would be a positive or a negative. Okay, we're back. It actually ends up being a negative. The reason it's a negative is that -5 and -2 is going to give us +10. But then when we bring down that third negative, that gets us back to -20. We can say a general rule: if we have an odd number of negatives, we'll end up getting a negative. What do you think this one's going to give us? Pause the video for a second and guess whether your answer is going to be a positive or a negative. Did you guess right? The answer is a positive. It is a positive because as we pair them, this gave us 10, this gives us 4. 4 times 10 is +40. Okay, and we can say a general rule is if we have an even number of negatives, our answer will be a positive. If we have an odd number, it will be a negative. So we've gone over our integers. All of these were whole numbers, either positive or negative. And then we're going to move on now to the rational. The rational numbers include our fractions and our decimals. There is a review of rational numbers on our notes up here. As a review, when you're multiplying decimals, we stack them, but we don't worry about lining up our decimal points. We just do our multiplication lines, and we count up the number of decimals here, and then we match it down here. So I'm going to mimic that here. So I'm not going to worry about lining up my decimal places like I need to in multiplication. Let me pause for a second. I'm going to actually get my answer of whether it's a positive or a negative before I begin. So as a review, I have a positive and I have a negative. When I have a positive and a negative and I'm multiplying, my answer is going to be a negative. I'm not going to worry about putting my sign in as I'm doing this. This is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. And now I'm going to count up. I have 2 decimals in my problem. So my answer needs to have 2 decimals in it. So it's going to go over once, twice, and my answer is going to be 1.86. I have that negative because one was a positive and one was a negative. I did it at the beginning so I didn't accidentally forget. Let me go ahead and do the multiplication one right now. I have a negative and a negative. When I have 2 negatives, my answer on multiplication is always a positive. In order to multiply fractions, I'm going to need to follow this long process that's reviewed on your key concept notes. You would need to make them improper. You would need to check for cross-canceling if you like to do that. You would need to multiply straight across. You would need to check for reducing, and then you need to write your answer back as a mixed number. It's a lot of steps. It's understandable that it's tough for a lot of kids. So my first step was to make these improper. I'm not going to worry about the negative sign because I've already put the answers a positive. So this is multiply, this is add. So this would become 5 over 2. I need to multiply, add. I'm just ignoring the negative sign. I already used it. This is 3 times 2 is 5. At this point, I'm going to check for cross-canceling. Is there anything that can cancel out? I'm going to darken that in. I have 5 over 2 and 5 over 3. There's no cross canceling that I can do, so I'm going to multiply straight across. When I multiply straight across, I get 25 over 6. Okay. To write that as a mixed number, top dog in the doghouse, I'm going to subtract. So my answer is going to be 4 wholes and 1 6. Feel free to pause and replay the video over again as needed.